Sometimes death doesn't come dressed in black robes or armed with a scythe. Sometimes it comes in a bottle small enough to slip through security, and subtle enough to slip past 20 of the highest-paid doctors in America. Victor Blackwell, tech billionaire, disruptor, master of the digital universe, was rotting from the inside out. $4 million bought him a private hospital suite that looked more like a luxury penthouse than a place for the dying. Mahogany-paneled walls, ambient lighting that whispered five-star hotel, and machines that beeped politely while charting his descent toward the grave. Inside that gilded prison, the world's best medical minds hovered around him. Harvard pedigrees, Johns Hopkins reputations, egos large enough to block out the fluorescent lights. They frowned, they scribbled, they ordered tests with names that sounded like Latin curses. And still, Victor's body withered as though death had already shaken his hand. Enter Angela Bowmont, the night shift ghost. She pushed her cart across marble floors waxed to perfection, the kind of woman everyone's eyes slid past without registering. To them, she was background, a blur, but her mind was a scalpel. She inhaled the cocktail of smells in the billionaire's suite, antiseptic sharp enough to sting, expensive cologne clinging stubbornly to his sheets, and something else, something metallic. Her stomach turned, her brain lit up. Then she saw it, the yellowed fingernails, the uneven hair loss, the faint, ugly shadow at his gums. It all clicked. A cruel chemistry equation she didn't want to solve but couldn't ignore. The poison's signature was right there, winking at her, clear as glass. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She knew what was killing Victor Blackwell. But what chance did a janitor have against a firing squad of specialists with diplomas worth more than her annual salary? 10 feet away, Dr. Thaddeus Reynolds presided over the room like a high priest in a white coat. Silver hair, Harvard polish, a voice engineered to command obedience. Without ever rising above a conversational hum, "Gentlemen," he intoned, "we've exhausted conventional pathways. Mr. Blackwell's symptoms defy standard diagnosis. His liver function continues to collapse. Neurological decline accelerates. We must widen our lens. Consider more exotic explanations." Angela's mop swished against the polished floor. Her head remained bowed, but her ears drank in every syllable. She had once been that student in lecture halls, quietly devouring knowledge, her notebooks crammed with insights. Life had shoved her into the night shift, but life hadn't killed her gift. And tonight, that gift was screaming. 15 years earlier, Angela Bowmont had been the rising star of the chemistry department, like a scholarship kid destined for a white coat and a research lab with her name on the door. Professors whispered her potential like prophecy. But destiny doesn't wait, it wrecks. The accident came fast, brutal. One phone call and she was no longer a student, she was a guardian. 3 younger siblings, all eyes and tears, depending on her. She swore she'd return after the semester break. She never did. Now the only lab coat in her life was one she washed with bleach and folded in hospital laundry. "The cleaning staff needs to finish quickly," Dr. Reynolds announced, his tone clipped. Dismissing her existence without the courtesy of a glance, Angela dipped her chin, face carefully neutral. She'd learned how to hide the sting, though it never stopped burning. They saw the uniform, not the mind wearing it. Yet her passion never died. While others scrolled social media, she devoured online lectures. While her coworkers chatted over lunch, she read medical journals. Credentials, gone. Knowledge, still razor sharp. As she wiped down the polished mahogany, her eyes snagged on Blackwell's chart. Peripheral neuropathy, alopecia, digestive distress. Symptoms scattered across specialties, treated like separate puzzles. But Angela saw the chemistry behind the curtain, patterns woven together like threads in the same noose. Dr. Reynolds swept past, brushing her shoulder, as if she were air itself. She stepped back, blending into the wallpaper. "He walks past me every day like I'm furniture," Angela thought, lips pressed tight. "That's why he never notices what I see." Her gaze drifted to Blackwell's personal effects, a line of luxury grooming products, curated like a museum exhibit. One item stood out: a sleek jar of imported hand cream. Yesterday, it had been angled differently. Someone had moved it. Her instincts bristled. In chemistry, tiny inconsistencies didn't lie. They exposed the truth. The suite door whispered open. A man entered, tailored suit sharper than a blade, confidence radiating from his every step. His badge read Jefferson Burke. Angela knew the name. Former rival, now self-proclaimed loyal friend, the kind of friend who read Forbes articles about himself. "Victor's resting," Dr. Reynolds said smoothly. "His condition hasn't improved." Burke stepped closer, lips curved in sympathy. "I brought his favorite hand cream," he said, placing an elegant black jar on the nightstand. "Imported from Switzerland. The only brand that doesn't irritate his skin." Angela's eyes narrowed. He didn't just place the jar, he displayed it like a salesman in a commercial. Too careful. Too deliberate. Her brain filed it away with a cold click. Later, while scrubbing an adjacent room, she overheard two residents whispering like schoolboys. "Strangest symptom progression I've ever seen," one muttered. "Like 5 diseases tag-teaming him at once." "Reynolds thinks it's an autoimmune cascade," the other replied. Angela's hand stilled on the mop handle. No, it wasn't the body betraying itself. Someone else was doing the betraying. The tests kept circling back empty, like vultures waiting for the kill but never landing. Numbers didn't add up. Results contradicted themselves. Meanwhile, the richest man in the tech world was withering in plain sight, while America's finest minds played a guessing game. Angela's brain, however, was stitching fragments together. The odd symptoms. The slow, deliberate decline. And that damned jar of hand cream. Expensive, exotic, recurring. A hypothesis began to form. Dangerous, unshakable. That night, she altered her cleaning schedule. No one questioned her. Nobody ever did. She ghosted into Blackwell's room during his sleeping hours, silent as disinfectant fumes. Each chart update she memorized. Every new symptom she logged mentally like data points on a graph. The pattern was sharpening into something undeniable, at least to someone who knew what to look for. By dawn, exhaustion hit. She leaned over the employee bathroom sink, staring at herself in the mirror. The uniform stared back, plain, practical, invisible. Her face was older, worn, carved by years of sacrifice, but her eyes still burned with intelligence. "The barrier's not glass," she whispered to her reflection. "It's cloth. This uniform blinds them. They don't see me." Her lips tightened. "But I see everything." At 2:17 a.m., the hospital shattered. Alarms screamed, slicing through the silence. Code blue. Angela froze, mop in hand, heart pounding. Doctors sprinted. Past. She pressed herself against the wall, then edged toward Blackwell's door. Half open. Chaos spilling out like light through a crack. "He's crashing." A resident's voice broke, tight with panic. "Liver enzymes critical. Kidneys failing. Neuroresponses almost gone." Dr. Reynolds stormed in like a general entering battle. Full toxicology panel, again. Something is triggering this cascade failure. Angela's pulse hammered. She crept closer, unable to tear herself away. Machines shrieked in rising tones, nurses darted like frantic chess pieces, syringes slammed into ports, 4 bags swapped at breakneck pace. Could it be environmental? Dr. Park, younger, braver, suggested. Food, water, even personal products. Reynolds turned his head, a single look. Cold, surgical. "We've tested everything in this room twice." "Stay in your lane, Dr. Park. Focus on medicine, not amateur detective work." Park shrank back, chastened. Angela felt fury rise in her chest. The arrogance, the blindness. The answer was sitting in plain sight, glowing like a warning sign. The team managed to drag Blackwell back from the brink, stabilizing him with tubes, wires, and desperate hands. When the crowd finally thinned, Angela slipped into the room. She scanned the chart, memorizing, absorbing, confirming. Then her gaze drifted, inevitably, back to the bathroom counter, a jar. That glossy black jar, catching the light with a faint metallic sheen. Something about it snapped a memory loose, yanked straight from a toxicology lecture years ago. Heavy metals. She moved closer to Blackwell, eyes narrowing, his fingernails, yellow, brittle, his gums discolored, his hair shedding with surgical precision, his abdomen racked by pain. Her breath hitched, her heart dropped into her stomach. Thallium, classic, textbook, clear as day, and yet invisible to the 20 pairs of genius eyes in the building. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself toward someone she trusted. Sarah, the night nurse. Sarah had always been kind, the rare one who treated her like a human being. Angela's voice came out low, urgent. "Sarah, has anyone tested Mr. Blackwell for thallium poisoning?" His symptoms, they matched perfectly. For a moment, Sarah's face softened with the warmth Angela knew. Then, just as quickly, it cooled. Her smile turned polite, dismissive. "Angela, I know you mean well, but these are the country's top specialists. If it were thallium, they'd have caught it." The words stung like acid, and in that moment, Angela realized. Sometimes the truth wasn't invisible, sometimes it was ignored. But the pattern of "if you're done eavesdropping, the bathroom needs cleaning." Sarah cut her off, voice suddenly cold, the kind of chill that leaves frostbite. "Leave the medicine to doctors." Angela stepped back, heat rising to her cheeks. Her throat tightened around the reply she didn't dare give. She retreated to her cart, the sting of dismissal, heavy and familiar. But underneath that ache, something harder was forming. Solid, unshakable. She knew what was killing Victor Blackwell. The real question wasn't what. It was how far was she willing to go to be heard. She wheeled her cart down the sterile corridor, mind racing like a centrifuge. Neurological decline. Digestive breakdown. Hair loss in that precise, sinister pattern. Every symptom lined up with the same brutal equation. She'd studied it years ago in a classroom she thought she'd return to. Thallium, the poisoner's poison, invisible, insidious, a killer hiding in plain sight. Her body moved on autopilot through the rest of her shift, scrubbing, mopping, dusting, but her thoughts were in a different place, locked onto Blackwell's failing body. At home, she dug out an old treasure, a battered toxicology textbook, the one relic she'd salvaged from her university days. Its pages were worn, but the chapter on heavy metals still whispered its secrets. Thallium, colorless, odorless, absorbed through skin. A perfect weapon that could masquerade as half a dozen other illnesses, until it was too late. The next morning, Angela arrived early, determination pumping through her veins like adrenaline. She watched as Jefferson Burke glided into the suite once again, another sleek jar of that exclusive Swiss hand cream in hand. He insisted, as always, that it was the only brand Blackwell could tolerate. This time, he even dabbed some on Victor's hands himself, smiling like a caretaker, while Angela's stomach clenched. Perfect. Too perfect. A delivery system that bypassed suspicion, hidden beneath luxury packaging. A slow, deliberate poisoning delivered under the guise of care. Angela's options spiraled through her head. A direct confrontation, useless. They'd laugh her out of the building. Evidence. Undeniable, irrefutable evidence. That's what she needed. Because time was running out. Every whispered nurse update, every glimpse of Blackwell's chart screamed it. He was circling the drain. During her break, Angela slipped into the hospital's public computer lab. Fingers flew over the keyboard. Symptom after symptom. Each search result confirmed the same grim conclusion. Thallium poisoning. Peripheral neuropathy crawling upward. The digestive collapse. The unique pattern of hair loss. It was all there, painted in neon red to anyone who dared to look. She scribbled a note on hospital stationery with shaking hands. Check for thallium poisoning. Classic presentation. Sliding it onto Dr. Reynolds' clipboard while cleaning his office, her heart pounded so loud she was sure it would give her away. The next morning, she stationed herself near the doctor's meeting room. The door was ajar just enough. She listened. Apparently, Reynolds' voice dripped with mockery. Our cleaning staff has diagnostic opinions. Laughter rolled through the room. An anonymous note suggesting thallium poisoning. Can you imagine? Another doctor chimed in, amused. Tested for heavy metals in the initial workup? Exactly, Reynolds dismissed. Standard procedure. Our janitorial detective must be watching too many crime shows. Next thing you know, she'll be scrubbing in for surgery. More laughter. Angela's chest constricted. Her hands gripped the cleaning cart until her knuckles turned bone white. The humiliation stung, but rage burned hotter underneath. Her pride could survive the ridicule. Victor Blackwell couldn't, so she recalibrated. If the old guard wouldn't listen, maybe the younger ones might. Dr. Park timid but less jaded, more human. That afternoon, she intercepted him, heart pounding, voice steady. "Excuse me, Dr. Park. About Mr. Blackwell. I believe he's suffering from thallium poisoning. His symptoms match perfectly." His eyes widened. For a heartbeat, hope flickered. Then discomfort clouded his face. "That's an interesting theory, but we already tested for heavy metals. Not if it's given in small, consistent doses," Angela pressed, leaning closer. "I appreciate your concern," he cut her off, glancing at his watch like it had betrayed him. "But I really need to be somewhere. Maybe mention it to the nursing staff." And just like that, he walked away, leaving Angela stranded in the hallway. Invisible again. That evening, as she scrubbed baseboards, a shadow loomed over her. "The head of security, Miss Bowmont," he said stiffly. "We've had reports of you interfering with medical matters. This is a warning. Know your boundaries, or there will be consequences." Her throat tightened as she forced a nod. Consequences. As if she hadn't lived with consequences her whole adult life. But this was different. This was life and death. Later, alone in the fluorescent hum of the employee break room, Angela sat at the metal table, staring at her reflection in a plastic coffee lid. Her hands shook as she made her choice. Victor Blackwell had ours, maybe days, and she was done waiting for permission. She would cross the line. Her job might pay the bills. But a man's life was worth more than her paycheck. Angela had made her decision. Risk everything. She mapped out her plan the way she used to plan lab experiments in college, with precision, timing, and just enough nerve to pull it off. Cleaning supplies for cover. A sample container lifted from the supply closet, its access to the lab she wasn't supposed to enter. Tomorrow, they would see the truth, or she'd lose it all trying. That afternoon, Jefferson Burke glided into Blackwell's room again. 15 minutes, no more. It's long enough to plant the hand cream in its usual prominent spot. Casually encouraging the nurse to massage it into Blackwell's arms and hands. Care disguised as ritual. Poison disguised as comfort. From the hallway, Angela watched, fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. Later, alone in the bathroom, she studied the sleek jar. Elegant, expensive, untouchable. Yet under the harsh light, the cream itself betrayed a faint metallic shimmer. To anyone else, nothing. To her trained eyes, a red flag. Patience was her weapon. She waited for shift change. A brief lull when the room stood unattended. With practiced efficiency, she scooped a small amount into a sterile specimen container and slipped it into her uniform pocket. No one noticed. No one ever noticed. That evening, she picked up Marcus and Tasha from the neighbors. At 12 and 14, they carried more weight than children should, cooking meals, finishing homework without her help, understanding their mother's exhaustion. "You okay, Mom?" Tasha asked softly, seeing the distraction etched into her face. Angela forced a smile. "Just a complicated situation at work, nothing for you to worry about." But as they slept, she sat at the kitchen table. Her war counsel spread out before her. A battered toxicology textbook, printouts from journals, her own meticulous notes. To anyone else, it looked like homework. To Angela, it was a map of murder. Thallium, the assassin's element. Rare, forgotten, buried in history books and spy thrillers, but unmistakable once you knew the signs. Standard hospital panels missed it if exposure was slow and deliberate. And who would dare imagine a billionaire being poisoned by his trusted friend? Delivered with luxury packaging and a smile, she stared at her cleaning uniform draped on the door, the symbol of her invisibility. Tomorrow, she vowed, she would rip through that cloak. Tomorrow. They would see both the poison, the woman who had uncovered it. Angela arrived early. In her bag, baking soda, aluminum foil, containers swiped from the cafeteria, innocent tools, except in the hands of someone who remembered chemistry like second nature. During rounds, she listened. Blackwell was worse. His speech faltered. Neuropathy crawled higher. The hair loss pattern sharpened. The clock ticked louder. She collected another sliver of the hand cream, then slipped into a maintenance closet. With steady hands, she improvised a lab from janitorial supplies. It wasn't state-of-the-art, but principles didn't need polish. She mixed, observed, waited. Her heart pounded as the reaction bloomed. The result was undeniable, positive for thallium. She snapped photos with her phone, each image a bullet in her chamber. Then she dug into visitor logs. A pattern emerged. Jefferson Burke, the rival turned ally, always bringing the same jar. Always smiling, always poisoning. At 2 p.m., word spread. Emergency conference. Blackwell was circling the drain. Every specialist summoned. Perfect. Angela ironed her uniform, polished her badge, gathered her evidence. Research printouts, symptom timeline, visitor logs, photos of the test results. She rehearsed her words in her head like a soldier preparing for battle. Inside Blackwell's suite, the atmosphere was grim. Doctors clustered, shoulders tense. Dr. Reynolds at the center, reciting the latest failures in clipped tones. Angela knocked once. Then she opened the door. 20 pairs of eyes snapped toward her. Reynolds' expression curdled. "This is a closed medical conference. Please leave. Mr. Blackwell is dying of thallium poisoning," Angela said, her voice stronger than her racing heart. "And I can prove it." A ripple cut through the room. Reynolds' jaw hardened. "Security?" he barked. But Angela stepped forward, setting her evidence on the table like playing her trump card. His symptoms matched perfectly. Progressive peripheral neuropathy, distinctive alopecia, abdominal pain, cognitive decline, classic presentation. She held up her photos. "This is a test I conducted on his hand cream, positive for thallium. The imported Chamberlain brand he uses daily, absorbed through skin, slow, deliberate poisoning." "Absurd," Reynolds snapped, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You are a housekeeper, not a physician." Angela met his gaze, unflinching. "I was a chemistry honors student at Johns Hopkins, until life decided otherwise. That doesn't erase what I know. What I know is that this man is being poisoned." She drew in a breath, then delivered the final blow. "And the poison is being introduced by Jefferson Burke. Every time he brings that hand cream." The room fell silent. The evidence lay before them like a ticking bomb. Angela moved piece by piece, deliberate. Surgical visitor logs, symptom charts, improvised lab results. Every word she spoke carried the weight of someone who had nothing left to lose. "The poisoning is gradual," she explained, voice steady. "That's why your panels missed it. Always just under your detection thresholds. But the cumulative effects?" She tapped the chart. "They're textbook." The room fell into a silence so sharp it hurt. Dr. Reynolds opened his mouth to dismiss her, then stopped. His eyes flicked down at the papers again. His jaw tightened. Dr. Park, the young physician who had been brushed off earlier, leaned forward. This actually makes perfect sense. "The neuropathy, the hair loss, the pattern is exact," another doctor added, almost grudgingly. "Yes. The alopecia and motor decline line up precisely." The silence deepened, charged now with something heavier than skepticism, shame. 20 specialists realizing they had been blind. And the housekeeper, the invisible woman in scrubs, had seen it all. "It's thallium poisoning," Angela concluded, her voice low, almost reverent. "The symptoms are textbook, if you bother to look for them." Her heart thundered beneath her composure. She knew how crude her closet test had been, but science didn't care about polish. Truth was truth, even scrawled in janitor's ink. "How exactly did you test for this?" asked Dr. Winters, the toxicology specialist, voice edged with suspicion. "Sodium rhodocyanate reaction," Angela answered without hesitation. "Modified for field testing with limited resources. Color change is unmistakable." Winters' brows shot up. "That's advanced, rarely used outside dedicated labs." It was covered in Harrison's toxicology seminar, Johns Hopkins, second year. A flicker passed across the room. "Professor Harrison was a legend. You were his student?" Dr. Park asked. "For one semester," Angela admitted. And for a heartbeat, the old wound showed in her eyes. "Before I had to withdraw." The room shifted. Reynolds himself bent over her makeshift results, and though his pride strained against it, even he couldn't dismiss what stared him in the face. The concentration pattern suggests deliberate, sustained exposure. Angela pressed on, her confidence rising. Every application delivered a sublethal dose. Each visit from Burke coincides with worsening symptoms. Questions flew at her, sharp and technical. She fielded each one flawlessly, her responses crisp, her terminology precise. With every answer, the janitor's uniform seemed to fade, and in its place stood a scientist, razor-sharp, undeniable. Park pulled up Blackwell's latest labs. If we run a specific thallium assay, it should confirm elevated levels, Angela finished. Hair samples from the last 3 months will map the poisoning timeline exactly. Something broke then. The barrier of hierarchy, the fortress of arrogance. Knowledge had detonated it. Run the thallium test immediately, Park ordered. The room snapped alive. Specialists rushed to collect samples. Security was alerted. Reynolds lingered, staring at the evidence like a man wrestling with ghosts. "If you're correct," he muttered finally, "then we've been poisoning him further with our treatments." Angela didn't flinch. "Chelation for mercury is useless against thallium. He needs Prussian blue." Now, the words hit like a command. Within minutes, the antidote was ordered. The room a storm of medical urgency. Nurse burst back breathless. Toxicology confirmed. Thallium. Tocation. Significant levels. Chaos erupted. This time controlled, focused, orders flew. IV lines adjusted, security footage pulled. Angela added, "Check the cameras. You'll see Burke tampering with the cream." Moments later, the hospital security officer strode in. Footage confirms it. Burke applied the cream himself when no one was present. FBI has been contacted. 3 hours later, monitors told the miracle. For the first time in weeks, Victor Blackwell's vitals stabilized. The billionaire wasn't dying anymore. He was fighting back. Angela stood at the wall, quiet, almost swallowed again by the frenzy, but not invisible this time. Reynolds approached. His towering frame seemed smaller now, deflated, his voice strained, unwilling but honest. "Your intervention was," he exhaled. "Correct." Angela met his eyes without flinching. "Completely correct." His shoulders sagged. "How did you see what 20 of us missed?" Angela's reply was simple, devastating, "'Cause I'm invisible. I observe without being observed. I see patterns without prejudice, and I never forgot my training, even when the world forgot me." Reynolds nodded slowly, guilt creasing his face. "We owe you an apology, all of us." But before the moment could settle, monitors beeped differently. Gasps rippled through the room. Victor Blackwell's eyes closed for weeks, blinked open. "What?" His voice rasped like sandpaper. "Happened." The room froze. All eyes shifted to Reynolds. In that second, he had a choice. Steal the credit or tell the truth. He straightened, breath caught in his chest. "You were being poisoned, Mr. Blackwell. With thallium, we missed it, all of us then." He turned, gesturing toward Angela. But she didn't. This is Angela Bowmont. She solved what 20 specialists couldn't. The silence that followed was different now. Heavy, electric, full of awe. Blackwell's weak eyes searched the room, finally landing on the housekeeper. "Thank you," Victor Blackwell whispered, his voice hoarse but steady. "For seeing what they missed." The silence cracked. First a single clap, Dr. Park resolute, then another, and another. Within seconds, the room thundered with applause, the sound rolling like a tide impossible to dismiss. Angela stood taller, shoulders squared, her voice cutting through the swell. Sometimes the most valuable knowledge isn't framed on a wall. The applause deepened. Respect filled the air where condescension had once lived. The invisible wall between support staff and specialists shattered like glass. The moment hung in triumph, until the doors swung open. FBI agents strode in, crisp suits, cold eyes, steel in their voices. "We need statements from all involved," Agent Ramirez announced, flashing a badge. Angela didn't flinch when they turned to her. "We need to understand exactly how you identified the poisoning," Ramirez said, addressing her with the same deference he gave the lead specialists. She answered with quiet precision. "I recognize the symptom pattern from toxicology training. then confirmed it through chemical testing. Your background is chemistry? Incomplete degree. I had to withdraw for family reasons. The agent's eyes softened with something Angela wasn't used to. Respect, Ms. Bowmont. Your observation may have saved a life and given us the key to prosecution. As the FBI swept into their routines, the hospital kept working. Blackwell's vitals improved hour by hour. Angela watched from the corner, a quiet witness to her own vindication. Dr. Park approached, offering her a chair. You've been standing since this began? Please, sit. It was a small gesture, but for Angela, who had spent years being expected to stand, to vanish, to serve without being seen, it meant the world. She accepted with a simple, thank you. Park studied her, curiosity laced with admiration, her chemistry focus, toxicology, organic analysis. I was researching detection methods for environmental contaminants. You would have made an exceptional diagnostician, he said softly. Angela gave a small smile. Life had other plans. Evening shadows stretched long when she prepared to resume her rounds. Near the supply closet, Dr. Reynolds intercepted her. The arrogance was gone. His voice faltered. Miss Bowmont, hospital administration has been informed of your contribution. They've authorized paid leave while you assist the investigation. You won't be returning to cleaning duties immediately. Angela heard the unspoken truth. They couldn't put her back behind a mop. Not anymore. The hierarchy had been disrupted beyond repair. I'll finish my shift first, she replied calmly. Reynolds blinked, startled, then nodded, respect written in the lines of his face. As she moved through the halls, Angela noticed the difference. Doctors who once looked through her now looked at her. Nurses who had dismissed her smiled. Conversations hushed as she passed, whispers trailing her steps. In the parking lot, she paused, gazing up at the glowing windows of Blackwell's suite. He was alive, not because of 20 specialists, not because of hierarchy, but because she refused to be silenced. Later, in a stark conference room, she recounted every observation to the FBI. Her words carried weight now, written down, logged, official. You identified the poison, the delivery system, and the suspect. Through observation alone, Agent Martinez asked, his pen stilling. I combined observation with testing and knowledge, Angela corrected. The pattern was clear once I allowed myself to see it. You didn't just save a man's life, Martinez said. You exposed a corporate assassination. Burke is in custody. Admits it was espionage. You wanted Blackwell weakened before the merger. Angela absorbed this without triumph, only quiet resolve. Justice had been set in motion. When she finally emerged, Dr. Park was waiting, holding out a coffee. I've been talking for hours. You need this. Angela took it, smiling. The gesture was simple. Simple things meant the most when you'd been invisible for so long. Later, Reynolds found her again, his voice stiff, awkward, unused to humility. Miss Bowmont, I want to apologize for dismissing you. Angela inclined her head. Your knowledge saved his life when ours failed, he admitted. The words dragged out like a confession. She answered gently, without malice. We all see from different angles. Sometimes the truth is visible only from below. His eyes dropped, his stature diminished. But his respect, genuine, if reluctant, lingered. Angela returned to her cart, pushing it down the corridor. Time whispers followed, not with mockery, but with awe. The janitor who saved a billionaire is the invisible woman who refused to stay unseen. And for the first time in years, Angela allowed herself a thought she had buried deep. Maybe invisibility was never her curse. Maybe it was her gift. That's her. The housekeeper who outsmarted 20 doctors. The phrase traveled faster than an infection through the hospital's veins. Angela moved through corridors with the same quiet efficiency, mop and cart in hand. But the force field of invisibility was gone. Eyes followed her now, not with pity, not with dismissal, but with respect. They didn't just see her uniform, saw her mind, her worth. The hierarchy remained. White coats still ruled these halls. But Angela no longer walked beneath it. She walked through it, differently, shoulders straighter, gaze steady. Once a shadow, now undeniable. Administration didn't know what to do with her. On paper, she was still environmental services technician. In practice, she was being consulted. Consulted on Blackwell's recovery and the FBI's investigation. At home, Marcus gaped at her like she'd sprouted wings. You solved a mystery that doctors couldn't? Angela smiled softly. I noticed what they overlooked. Sometimes, being in a different position lets you see things others miss. Tasha, sharper at 14, tilted her head. Will they respect you more now? Angela considered carefully. Respect isn't permanent. It's earned and re-earned. But yes, something has shifted. The press caught wind. Housekeeper saves. Billionaires screamed headlines, but hospital security kept the reporters away. Angela was grateful. Fame wasn't her prize. Truth was. A week later, she was summoned upstairs to administration. The hospital's chief of medicine, Dr. Eleanor Matthews, sat behind a glossy desk, her voice measured political. Miss Bowmont, your actions have placed this institution in... You've demonstrated exceptional knowledge while employed in a non-medical capacity. Angela waited. She knew the dilemma. Recognition threatened hierarchy. Silence risked scandal. The board has authorized a commendation and bonus. Matthews continued smoothly. And we'd like to explore opportunities to better utilize your background. It was praise without surrender. Careful dance. Honor her without admitting they had ignored her. I appreciate that, Angela said evenly. I've always valued learning, even when life pulled me away from it. Matthews exhaled in relief. Mr. Blackwell has also requested to meet you once he's strong enough. 1 month later, Angela walked not into a hospital ward, but into a skyscraper. Blackwell Innovations, the billionaire's fortress. Unlike the hospital, here she wasn't invisible. She was escorted, deferred to. Victor Blackwell, thinner but alive, stood as she entered his office. The man whose room she once scrubbed was now rising to greet her. Miss Bowmont, he said warmly. Please, sit. I've wanted to thank you properly. Angela sat, hands folded, humility intact. I'm glad you're recovering. Recovering undersells it. I'm alive because you saw what others missed. He studied her carefully. Dr. Reynolds told me everything. Your background, your brilliance, the sacrifice. Angela nodded, uneasy at her life laid bare. Intelligence shouldn't be wasted, Blackwell continued, slid a folder across his desk. Inside, papers, signatures, promises made real. I've established a foundation for minds like yours. Brilliant, but forced off track by circumstance. You're its first recipient. Her breath caught. A full scholarship to complete your chemistry degree. Living stipend included. Guaranteed placement at Johns Hopkins Toxicology Department when you graduate. This isn't charity, Miss Bowmont. It's investment. Angela's fingers traced the edges of the folder. Dreams she had buried years ago were suddenly here, alive on paper. My children, she began. The stipend covers childcare, Blackwell interrupted gently. Every obstacle accounted for. The only question is, are you ready to reclaim the path that was stolen from you? That night, Angela sat at the kitchen table with Marcus and Tasha, explaining the new future unfolding. Their eyes widened as she finally told the full story. You saved a billionaire, Marcus whispered, awestruck. I used knowledge I never stopped building, Angela corrected softly. And now, we start a new chapter. 2 weeks later, Angela Bowmont walked through the front entrance of Johns Hopkins. Not as janitor, but as student. Student ID in one hand, hospital badge for her toxicology internship in the other. She passed Dr. Reynolds in the corridor. Once, he had brushed her aside like furniture. Now, he nodded stiffly, the gesture tight but respectful. Dr. Park went further. Coffee in hand, easy smile, a friend. Angela adjusted the strap of her book bag, shoulders squared. No longer invisible, no longer dismissed. A woman seen. A woman becoming. The department already has cases waiting for your perspective, Dr. Park mentioned casually over lunch. Your observational skills are unlike anything they've seen. Angela smiled. But in quiet moments, her mind drifted back to those same hallways. Floors she once scrubbed unseen. The memory carried no bitterness, only awe at the impossible arc of her journey. Now, she stood in a toxicology lab, surrounded by the equipment she once polished, now hers to command. The white coat felt foreign, yet familiar. The weight of a dream deferred but not denied. She picked up her first case file with steady hands. She wasn't just analyzing data. She was proving to the world that brilliance doesn't need permission to exist. Transition wasn't flawless. Old hierarchies die slowly. Few still blinked at her, surprised to see her in a lab coat instead of pushing a cart. Angela answered them the same way every time. Not with words, but with flawless work. Dignity was her armor, competence her sword. Back in school, challenges came fast. Academic jargon, theory-heavy lectures. Her mind wrestled to catch up. But she had something textbooks lacked. Hard-earned practice. She didn't just know theories. She knew how they lived in the real world. You approach problems differently, her professor observed after a seminar. Angela smiled. I learned in reverse. Practice before principle. The Blackwell Foundation didn't stop with her scholarship. It grew, expanded. Stories like Angela's began surfacing everywhere. A delivery driver with a knack for biochemistry, a retail worker who taught herself computer science after shifts, a landscaper with an engineer's mind. Business Week pressed Blackwell for the why. His answer was simple. Angela Bowmont saved my life because she never stopped building knowledge, even without recognition. How many others like her exist? Invisible brilliance wasted because we only look where the credentials are. 6 months after the diagnosis that rewrote her life, Angela stood at a hospital conference podium. The same halls where doctors once brushed past her. Observation doesn't require credentials, she began, voice calm, steady. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from those trained to be invisible, who notice what others miss because they move differently through the world. In the audience sat Dr. Reynolds, his pride now tempered with humility. His expression was a cocktail of respect and unease. The face of a man forced to admit that hierarchy had betrayed him. Still, he nodded at her words. Respect was respect, even when it stung. Afterward, a young patient transporter approached her, nervous eyes wide. I've been taking night classes in nursing, she whispered. Nobody here knows. They just see the uniform. Angela looked at her and saw herself. The hunger, the frustration, the fight. Keep learning, she said softly. Knowledge belongs to those who chase it, not just those with titles. And remember, being underestimated has advantages. We'll see things others miss. The woman straightened, chin lifted. Another spark lit, another barrier cracked. That night at home, textbooks and lab reports replaced cleaning schedules on the kitchen table. Tasha leaned over her homework, brow furrowed in concentration. Mom, she asked, do you ever wish things had happened differently? That you hadn't had to drop out? Angela thought for a long moment. My path wasn't what I planned, but it taught me things no classroom could. How to observe, how to persist, how to find worth in myself when others didn't see it. She smiled at her daughter. The journey matters as much as the destination. 1 year later, Angela stood on a stage at the ceremony launching the Bowmont Scholarship for Scientific Excellence. The first 5 recipients, a delivery driver, a cashier, a landscaper, all prodigies in disguise, stood beside her. Brilliance exists everywhere, Blackwell declared to the crowd. We miss it only because we're trained to look in expected places. Angela Bowmont taught us that. Angela scanned the audience. There was Reynolds, no longer dismissive. His nod was slower this time, heavy with recognition of her triumph and of his own transformation. 2 years later, she toured the new Blackwell Research Facility. In the lobby hung a plaque, etched with words that captured her entire journey. The overlooked often see what the world refuses to see. She touched the plaque gently before stepping into the lab. By now, her reputation was sealed. The chemist who cracked impossible cases, who spotted what others missed. To her colleagues, it was genius. To Angela, it was survival. Finally reborn as strength. Graduation day. Angela stood in her cap and gown, 40 years old, diploma in hand, her children cheering louder than anyone else in the auditorium. She wasn't the oldest in the room, but she was the one who carried the heaviest story and still arrived at the finish line. As she embraced Marcus and Tasha whispered fiercely, I'm so proud of you, Mom. Angela kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered back, remember this? Your worth isn't decided by how others see you. It's always there, waiting for its moment to shine. And for Angela Bowmont, that moment had finally arrived. That evening, at a small celebration dinner, Dr. Park raised a toast to Angela Bowmont, the woman who taught an entire hospital that wisdom can be found in unexpected places. Angela smiled, reflecting on her journey, from invisible to essential, from dismissed to respected. The reversal felt complete, yet she carried with her the irreplaceable perspective of someone who had once walked the world unseen. In her new office at Johns Hopkins, a building she once cleaned, now her professional home, she kept a framed photo of herself in her old uniform, not as a wound, but as a badge, a reminder that invisibility had forged her strength. Her phone rang, a consulting request from another hospital grappling with a mysterious poisoning case. Angela picked up, her voice calm, confident, unshakable. "This is Dr. Bowmont. How can I help you?" The title felt right. Earned not by the usual path, but through persistence, brilliance, and the kind of vision born only in the shadows. And as she listened to the case, her mind leapt ahead, already connecting dots others hadn't yet seen. If this story of hidden brilliance and justice moved you, there's more waiting for you. Fate Tales brings you powerful narratives where underdogs rise, hierarchies crack, and overlooked genius finally claims the spotlight. Every week, we deliver meticulously crafted tales of moral victories, status flips, and the quiet fire of resilience. Just like Angela's journey, from invisible housekeeper to respected toxicologist. Hit subscribe and never miss a moment when the underestimated finally get the recognition they deserve.